Hi guys, I'm here with my good friend and functional medicine doctor, Dr. Seth Gerlach. I've invited him here today to talk with me about gut health. I can easily say at least 90% of the people that I work with have some sort of GI infection, discomfort, whether it be gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, and it just seems to be such a growing problem. So Dr. Gerlach here is an expert in gut health, so he's going to talk with me today about maybe why it's such a prevalent cause and some things that we can do to address it.
Awesome. So I always tell people, I've had a long, arduous journey with my health too, and a lot of it's been due to my gut. And so really getting my gut back on track really helped me propel forward my health. And I tell a lot of people that too. If you're going to get healthy, sometimes you have to start with the gut because it affects so many different things in the body.
Issue.
Yeah, and so a lot of people are having problems today. I break it down to 3 easy things. So one, I always talk about diet. So the foods we eat are going to directly affect our gut health, which affects the rest of our body. And that's at least, 2, 3, sometimes 4, 5 times a day, depending on how frequently we eat. And so the standard American diet that's full of, processed carbs, bad fats, sugars, they are just tearing apart our gut, which creates inflammation and immune problems and all these things. So we look at things like problematic foods like gluten and dairy. So the average person in the 1800s, they were eating about roughly 2 pounds of sugar per year. Today, that's upwards, it's over 100 pounds of sugar per year, per person.
Wow.
And so we've just skyrocketed our intake of all these foods. If you look at it over, an evolutionary perspective, our diet's changed more in the past 40 years than it had in the previous 4,000 years.
Yeah.
So our body and our gut having a hard time keeping up with all these processed foods.
Well, it's foreign to our bodies. Our bodies don't know what to do with it or how to process it.
It's same like genetically modified food. The body can't recognize what it is because it's not really a food. It's a food-like substance. So
do you think that creates an inflammatory effect too?
Because
when the body sees something foreign, it sends inflammation in to attack.
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest things that we can do is watch the things we're eating and start correlating the things that you're eating with how you're feeling then too. It's very, very important. So diet's 1. 2, I talk about toxins. And toxins we're exposed to so many toxins.
Yeah, every day, all day, it's all around us.
So I think there's upwards of 100,000 chemicals that have been introduced to our environment just since World War II. And that's more every single day. And, the majority of them haven't been tested for safety. None of them have been tested to see how they react with one another inside our body. And so,
or even for people who are on medications, how are those chemicals reacting with the medications that they're on?
Yeah. So medications can also damage our gut. Things like non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like Advil, ibuprofen, things like that.
Which many people are on every day.
So many people are on those for pain, for chronic pain, or headaches or migraines. I see that all the time. But
which we're finding that the pain and the headaches often are stemming from an imbalance in the gut.
For sure. We'll get to that later, which is very, very important.
Jump ahead of you.
I know, right? But so these toxins can affect and break down the gut, which again leads to problems all over the body. We talk about pesticides and herbicides. The average American consumes over a gallon of pesticides each year.
Wow. And think about that. You would never sit down and drink a pesticide. We all know how damaging that is to our body, and yet we consume food that's covered in it.
Yeah, and
all the time.
That's just from eating conventionally grown fruits and veggies. So a lot of people, they're trying to do they're trying to do great in their diet, and they're still getting this stuff that we're exposed to. So it's hard to get away from these things. Antibiotics are a big one too. So perpetually taking antibiotics, especially when we're younger, can alter the gut microbiome and then set us up for overgrowth, inflammation, all kinds of health problems in the future. So those are kind of the toxins that we talk about too.
Well, back to food a little bit with the antibiotics. We've talked about how our food supply, as far as our meat is concerned, is highly, highly full of antibiotics. And I know for my family, my children have never had antibiotics, and I haven't had antibiotics since I can't even tell you how long. So I try hard to keep those out of my body, but if I'm not eating organic, grass-fed meat, I'm consuming the antibiotics that cow is given on a regular basis.
For sure. So we tell people, you're not just what you eat, you are what you ate. And so if the meat you're eating, they're eating genetically modified corn, or they're being pumped up with hormones, or they're being injected with antibiotics, you are going to reap all those bad benefits from that, which makes us sick. So you could try to do all the right things, but still be bombarded with these, from.
I have a quick story on that. I was working with a woman who just couldn't get her hormone levels down. She tried all sorts of things, different hormone medications, and once we changed her diet and she was eating foods that did not contain any hormones, she was watching her milk and her chicken, all the typical things that they pump with hormones, and within 2 months or so, her hormone levels were all the way back into balance.
Wow.
And it was her food supply really was poisoning her.
That's wild.
So it's crazy.
It's just crazy. Like, I tell people, we had to be more diligent today than any other generation. So, like, our grandparents growing up, when they grew up, everything was organic. It was just
naturally that way.
Exactly. But today, people are like, oh, organic's just a fad. Well, actually, that's real food. What we're doing, we're altering and reshaping all of our food supply to where it's foreign to us, which affects our gut, which, again, affects everything. So you had to be diligent and read labels and eat real food in order to heal and repair. So those are the first two.
Yeah, so eating clean is stopping fueling the fire that's going on.
Exactly. 3 would be the third kind of biggest cause of GI problems would be usually overgrowth of bad bacteria. So when we take a step back and look at it, the gut's made of trillions of different bacteria, which is really cool. We're just scratching the surface of all this. And what it turns out, it's all about balance. I tell people it's like a garden, right? You want a lot of flowers and just a little bit of weeds. And a lot of times people, they come in, they've got a lot of weeds.
A lot of weeds.
And their flowers have been choked out. Not a good looking garden. And so we talked about some of the things that drive that, the toxins, the diet, but then it kind of leads to an overgrowth situation and you can't really get back without some help. I tell people too, it's like your yard. If you keep putting fertilizer in your yard and watering it without cutting the grass, well, your grass is going to overgrow. Same thing with our bacteria. If we're eating the wrong foods, if we're taking medications or exposed to toxins, we're going to overgrow. The bacteria is going to overgrow, and that just leads to, again, inflammation.
Right.
Most of the inflammation in your body comes from your gut, and it all starts there and stems there.
So we want to make sure that we're strengthening and feeding the good bacteria.
So we want to feed the good bacteria. We want to starve the bad bacteria. A lot of times I do that. The food groups that mainly feed bad bacteria would be things like sugars and processed carbs.
Right.
They love to eat that stuff. And so a lot of times we put people on a little lower carbohydrate diet to start with. Just that's like your lawnmower. You come in and you trim down the bacteria. Yep. Yeah. And then we can really restoring up. Good point.
And so let's talk a little bit about symptoms. Like I said in the beginning, I have people coming in and complaining of the gas, the bloating, the diarrhea, kind of the standards. But we have seen over time a lot of different symptoms that are associated with gut health that people may not know to make that connection. So let's talk about a few of those.
Yeah, so the gut's connected to every system in the body. And I get really excited when I talk about this. So the gut and the brain, they're connected. They're connected at birth. Actually at conception, not long after, they're connected via nerves, and the gut and the brain, they're connected via chemical messengers too. And so what happens in the gut happens in the brain also. So I tell people if the gut's on fire, the brain's on fire.
Right.
Actually, the new research is showing that I think Parkinson's and dementia starts in the gut, works its way up to the brain. So we see things like irritability, depression, anxiety, would you say irritability, mood shifts, things like this can all be an imbalance in your gut. So 90% of your serotonin, 50% of your dopamine is made in your gut. Yeah. Those are your happy chemicals, your stable chemicals. So without those, if your gut's inflamed or imbalanced, we're not going to be stable. Right. Everything's going to be out of balance with as far as brain. Brain fog's another one. Brain fog. I see brain fog all the time. Again, fire in the gut, fire in the brain. Right. Everything's foggy. Just not what I used to be. I can't remember things as much anymore. Classic symptoms.
I think so many times people let those symptoms go by the wayside because maybe they're not extreme. There are people who suffer from very extreme anxiety and depression, even debilitating. But then there are those of us who walk around with just minor fatigue and you don't feel happy. And they let those things just go. They don't address them until they get really bad. So pay attention to those things. When I ask people to food journal for me, I'm not just asking, do you have low energy? Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you having digestive distress? I want to know, after you eat certain meals, do you feel anxious? Yeah. some people feel depressed after eating, and it's really associated to the foods and the cause that it's having on its body. I know, for example, for myself, when I can feel great. I can be sitting on the beach in the most beautiful place, and if you feed me gluten, I become kind of a bear. I get agitated. I don't even know why. Well, I do know why, but there's no cause for it other than the gluten. I'll get headaches and I get joint pain. It took me some time to figure that out for myself, but so many people wouldn't know to associate those symptoms and those feelings with what they consumed as far as their food is concerned.
For sure. That's
So know your body.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I tell people. I love you're doing that, is keep a journal of things you eat every day, what you do, and then your energy, your sleep, your mood, everything, because it can all relate back to the foods you eat in your gut too.
It's important too. Don't just track it for that day. How are you feeling the next day and the day after? Because some of these foods will hit you right away, and some of them take some time to really manifest the symptoms within your body.
Yep, and it's all about how the immune system makes a response to food. It can take days to have a reaction to something.
Like we were saying, all these processed foods, the body sees it as a foreign invader and creates inflammation. So it's just an ugly process.
Yeah, so talking about that, we can have things all over the body, like pain is a really big one. So I see, back pain, knee pain, hip pain, wrist pain, neck pain. All these can be due to inflammation stemming from our gut. Another one is like joint pain, autoimmune type joint pain. So we see a lot, especially like gluten and knee pain. Can you see that?
Hand in hand, yep.
I see that all the time. And a lot of times it's because the proteins in these certain foods that can be problematic look very similar to the proteins in the body. And so the immune system's trying to figure out what's wrong. So it's kind of just taking everything out.
I've heard the same about that as far as thyroid.
Yeah.
What the protein that nourishes the thyroid mimics the gluten protein. So sometimes the thyroid is absorbing that when it shouldn't, and it's causing damage.
Yeah.
So
it's called molecular mimicry.
Yes.
Anyway.
We're kind of junkies on this. We could talk about this forever.
So we talked about pain. Another thing is skin. Skin's a huge one. Skin. I tell people,
psoriasis, acne.
So skin's a reflection of what's going on inside the body, especially your gut. And so if you've got gut problems, it can manifest as skin conditions. So people put creams on. They're trying these lotions and everything.
Yeah, you can only get so far treating it topically.
Yeah,
and often those creams have chemicals in them, and then you're just making the situation worse.
So you have to fix the problem from the inside out if you want to get true healing from it. So that's big. We talked about GI stuff. So constipation, diarrhea, gas, bloating. If you're not passing at least 10 to 12 inches of stool a day, you probably have some kind of GI problem. A lot of people I see go multiple days without going.
And I think that's normal. I ask people, it's a very common question that I ask people is about their stool, and they say it's fine and it's normal. Their normal is not normal. So like he said, 2, 3, 4 times a day really is good for you. You don't want that stuff sitting in your system.
So we get rid of toxins 4 ways, really. We breathe, we sweat, we urinate, and then we poop, right? And so if we're not doing all those regularly, we're going to be toxic.
Right.
So it's really just an easy way to think of it. Another thing too, people, if they react to foods, we talked about it a little bit, but if you notice any kind of reaction to foods, it's going to be a gut problem. And usually the quicker, usually the more damage the gut is also.
Food allergies, even seasonal allergies, all can be associated
oh my gosh.
with gut health.
Yep. So if that immune system's ramped up constantly in the gut, 80% of your immune system's in your gut. So if you're creating this environment for immune stimulation constantly with bad foods and toxins and what have you, your immune system's going to be on high alert.
All the time.
All the time. And so that's exhausting, right?
Yeah.
If you get sick a lot.
Yeah,
that's another
cold,
one too.
flus. I know people who just get them constantly, and once they get them, they can't shake it.
Yeah. And if you have any kind of autoimmune disease, celiac disease, psoriasis, type 1 diabetes, MS, the list goes on and on. A lot of the research is showing that autoimmune disease starts in the gut. And so if you're going to calm that down, you have to heal the gut. You see that a lot?
Yeah, I do. Another thing that people don't often associate with gut health is weight loss. Inability to lose weight, actually. And it can be really frustrating. For women especially, hormones play a big role in whether we can lose weight. But hormones can be directly associated with the quality of the bacteria and the health of our gut. So like we talked about earlier, toxicity can cause such an issue in our body. So let's talk a little about what toxicity does to our fat cells, because we all want to know how to lose weight faster.
Yeah, so the more toxins we have, toxins are stored in adipose tissue. It's fat. So the more toxins we have, the more storage spaces we need to store all our junk, right? So a lot of times we will make more adipose or fat tissue to store all these toxins. So a lot of times I see when we're helping people detoxify, they start to lose weight too.
Naturally, yeah. I've done cleanses with people and they've lost up to 12 pounds in a very short period of time.
Yep.
And we were just cleansing out the body. So a good sign too for women and men, if you start seeing more cellulite in areas of your body, that is a true sign of your body is not detoxing the way it should.
For sure. Now, I will say too, if you've tried all kinds of things to lose weight, cut calories or eating or exercising or whatever, and you're still not budging, it could be many different things, but a lot of times I see gut controls metabolism. The bacteria can actually control your metabolic rate. So that's very interesting and something you should probably check out too. If you're struggling with other health issues, hey, might as well focus on the gut, right?
So I think we've done a pretty good job convincing them that gut health is really important, and really we're hoping that we've opened your mind to the different symptoms that you could be suffering from and that it could be associated with your core health, your gut health. So let's talk a little bit about what we would do to begin to heal our bodies from this issue, rebalance the gut bacteria as you were talking about.
For sure. So we always start with diet.
Right.
At least I do. The things we put in our body, they're going to build you up or they're going to break you down.
And we have to stop fueling the fire.
Yes, you have to stop putting gasoline on the fire in order to heal. And so sometimes that's just a short period of time, sometimes it's a little longer, but cutting out problematic foods for you.
Inflammatory foods,
things like gluten can be very inflammatory for people. It's been shown in studies, not just people who have celiac, but just lay people, that gluten can unlock and unzip the gut lining, which leads to inflammation and immune
We're hearing about leaky gut all the time.
Leaky
gut. That's the cause of that?
Leaky gut is very, very big. It can be one of the contributing factors to autoimmune disease, inflammation, allergies, skin issues. All this can actually stem from leaky gut. And so watching the foods you eat is step one. So gluten, dairy, sugar is a big one. Sugar equals inflammation. There's other things like soy, nightshades, legumes. It depends on the person, what they're going to be sensitive to. And there's other things like limiting certain processed carbohydrates that can feed the overgrowth of bad bacteria. Super important also. And then make sure your meat's organic or free range, right? We want to skip the hormones and antibiotics that tear up our gut lining. Organic fruits and veggies, super important there too. So all those are really basics, and I know you have a process how you walk people through that. But that's step one, really. So step two is lifestyle stuff. And I know you teach this in depth also, but stress.
Stress is huge. I've seen, and even personally for me, I've seen stress wreak havoc on the body.
For sure.
You can have, quote unquote, the perfect diet and exercise and be sleeping okay, but if you have high stress levels, your body just can't fight back.
Yeah, and when humans go into stress mode, it's the fight or flight mode. And if we're not consciously doing things to bring that down, we're going to be stuck and ramped up in that fight or flight mode. And so doing things to come out of that's going to be very, very important, things to de-stress. But when we're stressed out, it's the body's natural inclination to, it's for survival. The body's not going to worry about digesting your food or having good sex hormones or having a good stable mood or a good robust immune system. It's worried about running away from a tiger and staying alive. And so...
And that's a good point there, because our bodies don't know the difference on whether we're about to get in a plane crash or get hit by a car, or whether we just live in a stressful state all the time. You're in a bad relationship, you have a very stressful job. All those things affect our body internally in the same way.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And the truth is, you about get hit by a car, you feel the stress of that, but that goes away kind of quickly. When you live in a stressful state of mind all the time, that wreaks havoc all day long, and it really creates damage to the digestive system especially.
For sure. Yeah, that's huge. Other things, lifestyle driven, we could talk about making sure we're digesting our food. So taking the time when you're eating, take some deep breaths, be in a relaxed state. It's called the rest and digest system for a reason, because you do those two things at once, and you can't do those when you're in fight or flight, go stress mode.
I'm guilty of that too, though. Life is busy, life is stressful for everyone, and I see people all the time. They don't even sit down when they're eating. They're doing Most of my patients will tell me most of their meals are eaten in the car, especially if you have children in sports. I'm guilty of that. So we just have to try to be more present and more mindful and plan ahead. Schedule out that time to be present when we're eating.
For sure. And 30% of your digestive enzymes will start to secrete just by smelling food, being in the room, being relaxed. So if you're not, you're going to miss out on digesting your food. If you can't digest your food, you don't have those nutrients for energy, for repair. And what you don't digest, the bad bacteria in your gut will digest for you, and then it's going to be a big mess. So another thing would be helping the gut, giving the gut a little bit of a break and helping it heal and repair. So using things like enzymes to help break down your food and absorb your food, it's going to take the pressure off of your stomach and your intestines and your pancreas and your gallbladder that have been taking such a beating for decades. So just using that, and I know you work with people with this too, helping them digest their food, it's kind of step one.
And really, some of the things that we're asking you to do are very small steps.
Right.
Chew your food. These small steps really build upon each other that really help us achieve the healing that we're looking for.
Yeah. And there's other things too you can introduce, like something to, put anti-inflammatory herbs in the gut to calm that down, or probiotics, which have been shown to be anti-inflammatory and help rebalance the gut. Basic things like that to bring a little balance to a gut that may be really imbalanced.
Yeah.
And the last thing, if you've done everything, if you're really strict with your diet, you really changed a lot, you're really focused on de-stressing, you're sleeping, you're exercising, you're doing all the basics, and you're still not there.
Especially addressing all the environmental chemicals around
toxins,
your personal care products, your cleaning supplies, all those things have to be addressed.
If you're still not there, then there's other things you can do, take another step to see if there's really underlying imbalances that are driving a lot of the symptoms you have. So a stool test can look inside the gut to see what's the environment like, right? Is there overgrowth of bad bacteria?
Parasites.
Other parasites? Is there inflammation? Can you digest your food? And that differs from the conventional medical model, which looks at, do we have ulcers or cancers or polyps or blockages? It's just a different mindset. Functional medicine doctors, health coaches, naturopaths look at functionality of the gut. Is it working the way it could be working? And then working back from there, and to help people optimize their gut and their health.
Yeah, that's great. So what else can we do as far as getting our gut on the right path?
The big things we talked about: diet, stress, toxins. Take inventory of everything in your home. So what are the things you're putting on your body? Is the water you're drinking full of toxins that really stripping your gut? Is the water you're showering in? You absorb so much water when you shower. You have a filter on your shower. I tell people we start a lot of times with, we had to trim down the grasses. So we go a little lower carb, and there's certain diets we can follow to starve out certain kinds of bacteria, whether it's small intestinal bacteria overgrowth or parasites or things like that. But man, the basics, diet, toxins, stressors, start there. That's where everyone just needs to, we need to take a step back and get the basics done first before we move on.
It's really important to not feel overwhelmed in this process too, because that just creates more stress. So although we've talked about a lot of things, start with your food. Don't worry about the rest. Make sure that you have all those good steps in place and you're consuming that clean, toxic-free, hormone-free foods, and then move on to lifestyle changes, and then move on to detoxifying your home. I too often see people try to attack all those things at once. They feel overwhelmed, they get even more stressed, and then they just quit. So step back, assess everything that's going on in your life, in your diet, and start with one small step at a time, and it really will create, over time, optimal health.
Yeah.
So today we really hope that we opened your eyes to how important our gut health is, and really all the different symptoms that can be associated with it. Like we covered so many different things. When somebody comes to see me and they have a headache, I talk to them about their gut health. They have eczema, I talk to them about their gut health. So you can see that we're both really passionate about making sure that that's in balance, and that's really what leads to optimal health. And if you have any questions, I hope this stimulated a lot of questions for you guys. Please don't hesitate to reach out and we'll get back to you. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
And thank you for talking with us
today. Thank you for having me. It's been awesome.